Chapter 19. The future, the way it will be if the Yeerks win, I said. Taxons using them all for a hive. I guess that means I can forget about any good sales today. I wanted to sound tough, like I wasn't impressed, but that was a lie. Worms larger than a grown man were crawling through holes in the mall. Skeletons lay across desks in the shattered ruins of our school and clutched the wheels of rusted cars. The air felt strange. The sky was no longer the sky of Earth. The trees were dying. As we circled around the mall, we could see that the tube train made a stop there. The glass tube was raised above the ground about 20 feet, like the monorail at Disney World. But there did not seem to be enough supports to hold it up. It was as if it was just hanging there. Outside the mall, a drop shaft rose up to the tube. A Taxon entered the shaft and swept up to a platform that bulged from the side of the tube. "Let's stay clear of any Taxons," Tobias said. But Marco shook his head. "Why? Don't you see? The Yeerks have won. So any humans are human controllers. The Taxons would just assume we were human controllers." "I guess you're right," Tobias agreed. "Yeah, so we can go anywhere. Besides, I don't think the Elements brought us here to get us killed." I relaxed a little, realizing they were right. But still, there was a deeply disturbing feeling about all of it. "I will morph into human form," Axe said. "The Yeerks may be accustomed to human controllers, but they will not have seen any Andalite controllers except for Visser 3. "Are you so sure?" Marco asked. "Maybe in the future, the Andalites lose to the Yeerks too." "Never," Axe snapped angrily. He began to slowly melt into human shape. "Let's hop the train," I said. "Let's see where it goes." "Excuse me?" Marco laughed. "Climb aboard the Yeerk version of Amtrak?" I shrugged. "You said it, Marco. They'll think we're controllers. And in any case, the Elements didn't bring us here to get killed." "It is sad about the mall," Axe said, now mostly human. "They had excellent foods for tasting. Tasting. The Elements showed us much of what was excellent in your species and your planet, but he did not mention the sense of taste. Cinnamon buns. And chocolate, too." "Yeah, we have to save any species that can invent the warm cinnamon bun," I said. "Come on, let's try this." It took a couple of minutes to walk to the drop shaft. As we neared it, a Taxon slithered up alongside us. He was racing to get ahead, like a rushing commuter. But aside from that, he paid us no mind. "You think the Yeerks have rush hour?" Marco muttered under his breath. "Quiet," Jake snapped. "We're controllers now, not normal humans." The Taxon reached the drop shaft ahead of us. He stepped in through the large opening and was immediately swept up onto the platform overhead. We all hesitated to follow him, so I stepped forward. Seconds later, I was on the platform with the others right behind me. We were 20 feet up, and I can see in all directions. I nudged Tobias. A small Yeerk pool had been built on the roof of the mall, right over the place where the food court had been. It was a shallow, sludgy pool. Half a dozen Taxons lounged around it, almost as if they were sunbathing. There was no cages at this Yeerk pool. Taxons are all voluntary hosts, another reason not to like them. At least the Hork-Bajir had resisted the Yeerks. Suddenly, in a rush of wind, a platform came down the glass tube like a bullet. It stopped in front of us, and the Taxon quickly slithered aboard. We followed. It was not a closed car like a train. It was just a clear platform, open at the front end and the back. There were maybe 20 standard seats, half occupied by human controllers. Toward the back was an open area where the Taxon went. At the front were several larger chairs, much larger, made of steel with no padding. Those had to be for the Hork-Bajir. Space for about 4 Hork-Bajir, maybe 2 or 3 Taxons, and seats for 20 or more humans. But there were far more humans around than either Taxon or Hork-Bajir, I concluded. We would not look out of place. The train launched like a bullet down the glass tunnel, but there was no lurch and no rushing wind. We just blew along at a speed that boggled the mind. A trip from the suburban mall to downtown usually took half an hour by bus. We made the trip in about a minute and a half. Jake gave me a look. We were getting off here. We rose and left the train. Fast, Marco said. Beats the bus, I agreed. It was beyond strange walking the streets of downtown. Entire skyscrapers were simply gone. Others now had wormholes for Taxons. I looked up 30 stories and saw Taxons crawling up the sides of a building that used to be the headquarters for a bank. The tallest building in town was the EGS Tower. It was 60 stories tall. It stood still, almost intact. But for some reason, the top 2 floors had been sheared away, then covered with a glass dome. Pale sunlight sparkled off the dome. It was almost like a beacon. Humans in Hork-Bajir walked the streets side by side, but not in large numbers. In fact, the entire city seemed far emptier than it should have been. We turned a corner and froze. That's where the city arena should be, I said. It's where we saw the circus. The arena, that big department store, that building that used to have the tall antenna on top, they're all gone, Marco said. Just gone. In their place was a yerk pool. A pool of shocking size. It was a small lake, really. You could have ridden around on it in a motorboat and not looked out of place. It was 3 times as wide as a football field is long. And be 4 times as wide. And all around it were cages, just like the underground yerk pool we knew too well. But there was a difference here. The humans in the Hork-Bajir in these cages no longer called for help. They cried. They sobbed. Or more often, they just stared blankly into space. But they did not call for help. They knew that there was no help coming. They knew that hope was dead. We just stared, the 6 of us, just stared emptily. A human controller brushed past us, jostling me as she went. "Excuse me," I said in a sarcastic voice. A mistake. I knew it was a mistake as soon as the 2 little words were out of my mouth. The woman stopped. She came back toward us. "What did you say?" she demanded. "Nothing," I said. But she kept staring at me through narrowed eyes. "What is your name?" I knew that answering Rachel was not going to work. She wanted my yerk name. I tensed up, ready for a fight. "Her name is not your concern," Tobias said. The woman sneered. "Oh, and why is that?" "You are spies. That's what you are. Spies." "Her name is not your concern," Tobias repeated. "His name is your concern." He jerked his thumb at Axe. "Because his name is Visser 3. Chapter 20. Visser 3? The woman repeated skeptically. It took me a few seconds to track. What was Tobias talking about? Why was he saying Axe was Visser 3? Fortunately, Axe caught on more quickly. He immediately began to demorph and return to Andalite form. And as soon as the Andalite stalk eyes appeared, the woman began to tremble. But you said Visser 3. Only Visser 1 has an Andalite host body." "Great." Visser 3 had been promoted. "Yeah," I said to the woman, "but he was Visser 3 back in the old days. Back when we were all friends. Comrades in arms." No one told us you were visiting Earth, Visser," the woman babbled. She was clearly terrified. Obviously, Visser 3's reputation had not softened over the years. Axe had regained his full Andalite form, and the various controllers on the street were staring in a mixture of fascination and fear. "If I had known," the woman moaned, "I would never." Axe waved his hand dismissively. "Silence. You are right to remain vigilant. If you had not been vigilant, I would have destroyed you for being a careless fool. Now get out of here." "Yes, my Visser, yes." The woman took off. Fast. Which left us standing around in the street, gaping at the yerk pool, and a lot of controllers gaping at us. "This isn't good," Marco said. "Word is going to travel very fast that Visser 3 is here, and someone is going to realize the truth." "So what now?" Jake wondered. "How long does the Elemist want us to leave us here?" "Until we're convinced he's right," Tobias said. There must be something more he wants us to see, Cassie said. I glanced at Cassie. She looked puzzled. I guess I expected her to look like, see, I told you so, here's the future. But she seemed troubled, like she couldn't make sense of something that was bothering her. What? I asked her. She shrugged. Just the feeling there's something deeper going on here, something we don't get. The Yerk pool was a busy little place, controllers coming and going. Host bodies were shoved into cages and dragged back out when it was time. There was a steady procession along the 6 different piers, draining out and taking in Yerks. Over it all loomed the EGS tower, topped off by the glass dome. Why put a Yerk pool here? I wondered aloud. I mean, there's all kinds of open areas. Why would you go through the trouble of removing the buildings that were here? It's not like this is exactly a scenic location. I wonder what year it is, Marco said. Is it next year? 10 years from now? 20? I heard a low roar coming from the sky. A Yerk bug fighter swooped down low, took a look around the EGS tower, and settled toward the near side of the Yerk pool. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to that bug fighter. Maybe it was some strange psychic urging. Maybe it was the Elemist making me go closer to see what he wanted to show me. Wherever the urge came from, I found myself walking toward the bug fighter. Hey, where are you going? Jake said. You guys stay back, I said. It's okay, Marco said, jerking his thumb at Axe. We're with Visser 3 here. Excuse me, I mean Visser 1, and congrats on the big promotion, by the way. Axe stepped out quickly in front of me, swaggering and acting the role of the great and terrible Visser. As we drew closer to the pool, there was a crowd of controllers, humans, Hork-Bajir, Taxons, and a few odd species I had never seen. The crowd parted very quickly. No one wanted to accidentally annoy Visser 1 in any way. We swaggered up to the bug fighter like the bosses of all the world. Then the door of the bug fighter opened. I stopped. Axe stopped as well. The others crowded behind us. My skin was tingling. My hair felt like it was standing on end. I knew something was about to happen. Something awesome and terrible. And then they stepped from the bug fighter. A human and an Andalite. I knew the Andalite. We had met before. I could feel the dark dread that emanated from him. Visser 3. The real Visser 3. Seeing Axe along with Visser 3, the crowd of controllers immediately knew the difference. Visser 3 has an Andalite body, but there is no mistaking him for anything other than a creature of pure evil. Well, well, Visser 3 said to the person with him. Right on schedule, just like you said it would be. I stared at the human. She was a pretty young woman, maybe 20 or 22 years old. She had blonde hair cut short. She wore no makeup. Her clothes were plain. I had stopped breathing. My heart had stopped beating. I tried to swallow, but couldn't. Hello, Rachel, the woman said to me. Hello, Rachel, I replied. Chapter 21. It was me. Me as I would be in the future. I knew you were coming, the future Rachel said. After all, I was you. Once I stood right where you stand now, and looked just like you look now, and saw myself as I am today. She sounded perfectly calm, but her eyes flickered quickly to Axe, then back to me. Visser 3 shook his head in amusement. If only I had known from the start that you were humans. For so long I believed you were Andalites, until at last we caught you. I felt strangely calm. I mean, considering what was happening. I was face to face with Visser 3, who was now Visser 1. I was face to face with my own future. You're a controller, I said to the older me. Of course, she said. She smiled. A cruel smile, not at all like me. We won. You all led us on a nice chase, but in the end, we won. This planet is Yerk territory. The human race has achieved its destiny as host for the Yerk race. If you know so much, How did we come to be here, in the future? Marco asked. An Ellimist has brought you here, Visser 3 said. In your own time, you face a choice. The Ellimist has brought you 6 humans. 5 humans and 1 Andalite, here to show you a future, to show you the future. Soon he will return you to your own time. What choice did we make? I asked. The older Rachel smiled her cruel smile. The right one, obviously. Everything has worked out perfectly. Yeah? Jake said defiantly. Maybe not. The Ellimist brought us here to help make us a choice. So what if we go back to our own time and decide to accept the Ellimist's offer? Then Rachel won't be around to be turned into a controller. She'll be with the rest of us on whatever planet the Ellimist takes us to. I watched closely for any reaction by my older self. Nothing. Not a flicker. And yet, there was something. She was trying to hide something. You know what we decided, but still here you are, I said. So either you're here to change what I decided, except, no, then it might change all of this. Or else you're here because your being here is what caused me to decide whatever I decided. Confusing, isn't it? Mr. 3 sneered. I don't know how the Ellimist keeps it all straight. Let's leave, Cassie said suddenly. I don't like this place, and I don't like these 2 creatures. But Cassie, I'm your best friend, my older self said mockingly. No, you're not. Maybe Rachel is still alive in there somewhere, but what you are is a Yeerk. Cassie started to turn away. As she did, she tripped. She fell against me. Suddenly the older Rachel was there. She grabbed me and held my arm steady so I didn't fall. But to Axe, it must have looked like she was lunging at me. His tail whipped forward in the blink of an eye. Axe's quivering blade was pressed against the older Rachel's throat. Her eyes went wide with fear. She shot a glance at Visser 3, and to my amazement, Visser 3 seemed frozen. He was confused. His main eyes narrowed. He looked from Axe to the older Rachel to me. Suddenly I knew. This wasn't in the script, was it? I asked him. This wasn't supposed to happen. Something has changed. It's Axe, isn't it? You said 6 humans before. That's what you expected to find. That's what Rachel told you would happen. But the future has changed, hasn't it? Something is different. Visser 3 glared at me, and now he dropped the pretense of politeness. Do you know what I did when I finally caught you and your little band of Animorphs? Do you know what I did? I gave each of you to a trusted lieutenant. And once you belonged to us, once you were mine, I killed your bird friend here, and we roasted his body. Visser 3 leaned in close to me. He was tough and stringy, but we added a sauce you humans have. Barbecue, I believe it's called. And then your friend Tobias was delicious. You had a leg, as I recall. You ate it and laughed. I really wanted to morph right then. I really wanted to become the grizzly and tear Visser 3 a few new holes. But there were hundreds of controllers around, and while I was morphing, I would be vulnerable. Axe still had his tail blade pressed against the older Rachel's throat. He can't hurt us, Axe said. He can't do a thing to us. If he does, he would change history. He doesn't know how it would all work out. Good point, Axe, Jake said. He met my gaze. He had a dangerous, angry look in his eyes. He can't hurt us. But the reverse, well... Excellent point, I agreed. I focused my mind on the grizzly bear. So, Visser 3, you killed my friend Tobias and roasted him over a fire? I was beginning to change. So was Jake. I have 100 Hork-Bajir I can call, Visser 3 said. So call them, Marco said. Maybe one of them will get careless with a Draken beam and kill one of us. How do you suppose that will change the past? Hard to tell, isn't it? Claws had sprouted from my fingers. Coarse brown fur was covering my body. I could feel the surge of power as I became more bear than human. Visser, the older Rachel said tersely, what do we do? We, Visser 3 said, we do nothing. I retreat. Visser 3 began backing away, but I wasn't about to let him go. I had him. And after all the pain he had caused, I had him. After all the damage he had done, he was now powerless. I did not wait until the last of my human friends was submerged. I was bare enough. I charged. Bears are very large and look sort of clumsy, but they can be very fast. Now, you filth, let's see who eats who. I barreled toward him. He turned to run, but he had turned too late. I hit him. 800 pounds of fast-moving bear hit Visser 3 in the flank and brought him down hard. I drew back one huge claw and swung it with all my might. My hand slapped the trunk of a tree. My human hand. Ow! I was human again. I was in the woods behind Cassie's farm. The others were all there as well. Tobias, once again a hawk, perched in a branch overhead. No, I'm sick of this, I yelled. I slammed the tree again in sheer frustration. I'm sick of this. I had him. Cassie came over and put her arm around my shoulders. It doesn't matter. That's a Visser 3 who doesn't exist yet. I'm so sick of this, I said again, a little more softly. What's the point? What's the point in anything? We know the future now. We know what happens if we decide to stay and fight. I felt lost. That last ounce of energy just seeped away from me. It was too much. Too many things to deal with. And what was the point? What did it even matter what I did? I flopped down onto the grass and pine needle covered ground and rested my head in my hands. I was done. Done trying to make sense of a world where I could be jerked back and forth like a puppet. The 6 of us just lay there on the floor of pine needles for a while. Staring, thinking, letting it all sink in. It was over. The war was done, and we had lost. It could all still be an Elemis trick, Axe said, half-heartedly. No, I said flatly. You know it's not a trick, Axe. At least not the way you mean. If the Elemis wanted to force us to do something, he has more than enough power. We need to think this through, Jake said wearily. I shrugged. You think it through. I'm tired of thinking. I was just about to vote when the Elemis dragged us off to his little show and tell. I was about to be good old Rachel and vote no. I was about to be tough one more time. But I'm changing my vote. I'm not going to end up as a controller. That's not going to happen. Not to me. If that means I'm running away, too bad. I changed my vote. You know what? At that moment of surrender, I felt good. I wish I could say I didn't, but I felt a wave of relief wash over me. No more hard decisions. No more danger. No more having to be brave. That makes it Cassie, Rachel, and me in favor, Margot said. 3-2, unless Axe is voting. I follow Prince Jake, Axe said. Maybe, Tobias began, maybe if some of the human race survives on some other planet, maybe it will be like when they brought wolves back to live in the national forests. I mean, maybe someday we can return and take Earth back. Are you changing your vote, Tobias? Jake asked him. Jake, you know I would never run from a fight. We all just sat there, staring at nothing. We were going to do it. We were going to abandon the fight. We all knew it. Jake hung his head. Elemist, he said softly to the air. We have decided. The answer is yes. The Elemist had said that we would be transported immediately once we decided. I expected my next breath to be drawn on some distant planet. But nothing happened. Nothing at all.